Welcome to the Earth Observed podcast. This is a podcast where I sit down with the founders, the technical leaders, and the minds shaping the future of Earth data, geospatial technology, and atmospheric AI across Europe, North America, and beyond. In each episode, we're going to be taking a vertical dive into a topic chosen by our guest, giving you a front row seat to the ideas, tools, and challenges that enable innovation from space to subsurface and everything in between. So today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Bill Greer, co-founder of Common Space, a non-profit building an open access, independent, high-resolution satellite constellation designed specifically for humanitarian action. Bill's career has focused on making geospatial data more available and accessible. He's worked across the ecosystem from building satellites at Albedo, building analytics and monitoring products at Maxar, making data more open at GeoCommons and then Esri, and building open methodologies at timber.io. That experience gives him a rare end-to-end perspective from designing space systems and remote sensing infrastructure to applying GIS in the field to help save lives. So thank you very much for joining me today, Bill. It's the first recording of Earth Observed, so a little bit nervous, but no, really is a pleasure and very, very happy to be here. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the first ever episode. Hopefully big things to come. And
absolutely.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no problem at all. So today, I guess as the title suggests, the People's Constellation, how independent satellites could change everything. Did you just want to give a bit of a foundation to today's conversation and maybe the areas of which we can go into?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's a bit of a mouthful because we're trying to create, an independent, high resolution, nonprofit optical satellite. It's a lot of kind of adjectives to explain a concept that I think if you're in the remote sensing space makes a lot of sense. And if you're not, then there's a lot to kind of sort through there. So what I'd say there is just to set the baseline, we're trying to build a satellite much like Planet or Maxar. So high resolution, probably not as high resolution as Maxar, but we're trying to make it freely available. So I guess the other corollary would be Landsat and Sentinel missions, right? So those are openly accessible satellites that are amazing for climate change and understand the entire world, going back for years and years and years with very scientifically accurate data. So what we're trying to do is move into the high resolution, so from 10 meter imagery down to 1 meter or below imagery, and to make that data open and available specifically for humanitarian aid, disaster response, and kind of all of these kind of do-gooder activities that are currently under attack. So the reason we say independent is because we're trying to raise money independent of any government. So the idea here is that this isn't another commercial company that is tasking satellites for profit or primarily under the defense and intelligence use case. So the idea here is that there's a huge amount of users that do not have access to imagery that really need access to imagery. So, we're talking about all these NGOs, nonprofits, all the USAID programs, and then local people in the field within their countries that really know better what to do with imagery than we necessarily know what to do with. And high resolution meaning, hey, they can actually get good, high commercial quality imagery to meet their use cases that Landsat and Sentinel don't meet. So that's kind of the ground setting there is just nonprofit, kind of think of it as a digital public good, right? So this is data for the common good, and it's data that I think the defense intelligence industry has proven is super valuable. And now it's time for the humanitarian society to kind of unleash that value on people in need.
Awesome. No, it's really, really interesting. And I was having a conversation today, as it goes, with a particular person who is trying to advocate and introduce open source data to like humanitarian crises, disaster response and kind of risk mitigation, making sure that the data there is publicly available as and when NGOs need it. Naturally, tasking can be a costly exercise. So it's incredibly important to take that into consideration. I guess if we're going to speak about common space in a chronological order, I guess one of the first questions I have for you is, where did this idea sprout from? At what point did you kind of conceive this idea that, this isn't just a matter of interest anymore? This is something that does require urgency. This is something that I want to be working on.
Spent a lot of time in the commercial industry, Maxar and Albedo, and there's always been this hope, this pull from everyone in the industry. And I think that this is, almost everyone you talk to, if you talk about like their best day at work, they're talking about helping in Haiti or helping in Afghanistan or in some crisis, some flood, some earthquake, some disaster. So it's always been there, right? And so my co-founder, Rhiannon Price, I met her. She was one of the people that started the open data program at Maxar. And that was kind of one of those programs that we're always very proud of, because everyone, I think everyone in the industry really sees that this data can be incredibly useful in these situations. Again, I'll date myself here, but years and years ago at Maxar, there was a big project to try to find illegal fishing. And we found two ships that were kind of pulled up next to each other. And we thought we were going to try to find some illegal fishing, and it was actually human slaves. And so,
Right.
Maxar won I think it was a Pulitzer Prize for freeing 2,000 enslaved persons from this fishing vessel. And like, those are the kind of stories that we see a lot of one-offs on, but no one's ever turned it into a systematic thing, right? So it's, if we got lucky, or every now and then there's a disaster that we get a really good result of, but the capacity doesn't actually exist within the commercial defense intelligence structures that we currently have to kind of fully dedicate to those kinds of missions. So
Absolutely.
this has always been in the back of our heads, but I think I was always hesitant to try to say like, we need a whole constellation to do this thing, right? So Rhiannon and I kind of got together at SAT Summit last year, and we had this debate of, is it time now for humanitarians to own and operate their own satellite? And so, we had a great debate on the topic. And when it comes down to it, like, the prices have gotten so low, the need is there and consistent, and the access to the imagery is difficult to come by. So we kind of got together in preparation for that debate and that summit, and we kind of couldn't let the idea go. So I've been really diving in full time on this ever since.
I want to word this next question the right way. This particular problem that you are solving, is it a problem that you believe no one else truly understands yet or truly gets? Or is it a case that people are aware of the problem, they are just overlooking the problem, and that actually you want to take matters into your own hands here?
Yeah. So, this is where it gets kind of like really complex and nitty gritty on the details of these things, right? So obviously we have Maxar, we have Planet, we have a bunch of these really great space companies that are out there.
Sure.
That do a lot of this work, but they are not dedicated to this work. So I think going back to the thing that no one understands is, what are the issues with getting that data out to people that actually need it? And again, this is where it just gets complex on government contracts. So generally the US government has generally provided all federal agencies, and this is in the US, and a lot of international partners like the UN, access to their imagery archives. I think we've seen a shift in that, where the GG contract was used by the Trump administration to cut access to the Ukrainians. And then
Right.
it cut access to the United Nations and the World Food Program. It's turned these things back on. And I want to point out, that wasn't the commercial industry doing that, right? Like, that was the administration making a decision via a government contract.
Yeah.
But the thing that people kind of don't understand about this whole system is that it's not set up to create a public good. Landsat and Sentinel are, but they are higher resolution, or low resolution. So we're trying to fill what I would say is a public goods gap on high resolution. And then we're also trying to fix what I'd say is a market failure on high res. So Maxar, Planet, all these other folks, great imagery. They come through a lot of times, but generally the licensing is just not usable for humanitarian aid and disaster response. The business cycles are too slow. The latency is too slow. The time it takes them to release data means it's no longer valuable in the field. So we really think we do need an actual dedicated system for that. And I mean, disasters are increasing and support for those disasters is decreasing. So, I think now is the time that we need to move. So kind of a complex system that I'm trying to simplify as well as I can. But I'll just say the data is out there and the data is inaccessible unless you are in a position where this data is super accessible, which is not our users.
Sure. Where are you at right now with Common Space?
So we're still super early. We're kind of at feasibility and mission formulation. So we've been working on this conceptually for a long time, and we've got letters of support from some great organizations. But funding right now, post the collapse of USAID, has been super difficult. So we're looking for serious funders, and we've had a lot of letter support from organizations that will help us once the data is out there. Organizations are saying, hey, we'll build population estimates in disaster areas. We'll use that for X, Y, and Z. So the support has been kind of overwhelmingly high from especially the geospatial and mapping community and people that understand the problems. The humanitarian organizations have concerns about being able to use the data, but they also have issues with trying to access data through anyone else. So right now we're still at that early stages, trying to get funding to make sure that this becomes a reality, because I think it's absolutely necessary. So I've been full-time on this for this whole year, basically.
I'm keen to understand in this arena how you define impact, and I'd be also keen to understand, has your view on impact changed since you started out in your career?
Impact is kind of one of those things that's super important, right? Especially in this nonprofit space. And again, my whole career has been on the commercial side. So moving over to the nonprofit space has been really interesting, because my metric was always profit. And now I'm like, oh, that's why this market failure occurs, is profit isn't the thing we should be looking at, right? It really needs to be impact. And so this is where, Rhiannon is way better than I am at talking about the actual impacts of these things, but we really are trying to measure this in lives saved or improvement in life, right? And so we've broken down via SDGs and any other number of metrics on where we think satellite imagery at this resolution in particular could be most valuable, right? And so there's a ton of it, but what I'd say is the narrowest mission would be populations at risk from climate and conflict. So that's resilient cities, that's any natural disasters or human-created disasters, and doing the entire disaster cycle. So not just response, but planning, mitigation, response, and recovery, building out early warning systems, but really understanding where there are populations, where they're at risk, how we can mitigate those risks, and then also understanding the movements of those things. The reason we're doing an optical satellite is because so many of these systems are super interrelated. I want to give a quick shout out to FireSat, because I love their mission, because it's super clean and simple. It's a global wildfire detection system. They'll do 20 minutes per day, but they find fires and they give it to firefighters, and it's this really nice, straightforward thing. Our optical system isn't quite as clean, because we're looking at conflict and we're looking at disasters and the interrelations. For example, if there's a wildfire and it forces people to migrate across a border, and then that uses local resources, and then there can be droughts. So you have these all follow on and knock on effects from everything. So that's really what we think the visible imagery is necessary for these more complex polycrises that kind of compound on each other.
Looking to the future, a year from now, we're looking at latter parts of July 2026. We're having a very similar conversation. What innovations, what developments would you have liked to have happened since this conversation?
Oh man, I would love funding to get started to work on this.
Naturally, it's a problem on many people's minds. Always, I'm not even going to say now or today, but yes, no, I do get that.
For sure. But hopefully at this point, we'll have most of the non-recurring engineering figured out, right? So there's just some really cool and fun, exciting things that you can do when you're designing a satellite for a particular mission. So I think right now what's in our head is kind of like a more standard satellite, but there's a lot of levers that you can pull to kind of get more interesting amounts of data. There's a bunch of trade-offs between coverage and resolution, all these other things. But then
Sure.
also the downstream tools that lead to impacts. So I think there's a ton of potential for AI in the space. So I really want to see AI move forward fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Because by creating open data, we also want to become kind of the fuel that powers a lot of this geospatial AI stuff, right? This is hopefully 1 meter resolution, openly available data that becomes the training data for satellite imagery and large world models and the geospatial reasoning systems that we want to work with. And then working with our partners to make sure that we can definitely connect the raw data that we're going to collect from the satellite to the impact on the ground that we hope to see as a result. So, always pay close attention to that space. That's kind of the technology I think the next year you're really going to see a lot of. I just hope it doesn't come at the expense of good data going into those models and those systems, because we definitely need that as well.
I feel like podcasts are an opportunity for you to feel vulnerable, okay, and to surface the fact that not everything is perfect, especially when setting up businesses, and especially in the arena that you're going into, notoriously it's tough, right? But that's why you're doing it. I guess what I'd love to know is what's something you got completely wrong in year one?
So people that know me will know I'm notoriously bad at being vulnerable, but I'll attempt that.
You're in a safe space. For
Yeah,
anyone watching, be nice.
yeah. So to me, personally, I think the biggest mistake that I made was kind of preaching to my own choir. Right? Is a lot of my friends, social group, people I work with are all in this kind of remote sensing and GIS community, and
Yeah.
so I think I spent a lot of time really trying to make sure I was validating my ideas, because I have a bunch of friends and mentors that are just like way smarter than me on this stuff, and trying to get like that validation to make sure I wasn't completely wrong on things. And
Yeah.
really appreciate the whole community for listening to me for way too long on this stuff. But then also realizing that like this community, does not have funding. Like everyone's going out to VCs, everyone's trying to do these things, and then I've done work in the humanitarian space before. I deployed to Kurdistan. I was on the front lines with ISIS for a few weeks. I was in Mali. But I spent more time talking to the geospatial people that would understand the problems. And I did not spend enough time either teaching or talking to a lot of the humanitarian community on how this could actually benefit them, right? It was more of like talking to this community over here that knows and understands these problems versus trying to explain to the people how this could actually help them, help their impact, help their mission, and systemically improve the outcomes that most humanitarian groups would see. So I'm really trying to shift away from my community that I'm comfortable with and spending more time with the practitioners in the field and on the ground.
Mhm.
It's also hard right now because of the current environment on on humanitarians and the stress they're going through.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And I guess as well, like we look at organizations like the United Nations. There's lots of communities like the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap. Um, is there any association with them, with some of the work that you're going to be doing? Is there going to be some cross pollination? You know, I would imagine that you have shared interests, the same goals. Just keen to understand your angle on that and what you want to do at Common Space in relation to that.
yeah, for sure. And the hot humanitarian OpenStreetMap team has been like one of our biggest proponents. They've been amazing. We keep touching base with them all the time.
Good.
I'm hoping to get Kate Chapman on our board. Like there's a ton of connection there. And I don't want to say like we're the only people out there doing
Of course.
geospatial for good stuff. It's just at the Esri UC and just a number of people out there. We had Map Action, which does tons of this, the GIS Core, there's the UN. Hot is obviously one of the big ones. And I think what's been missing from that entire ecosystem is this foundational data layer. So we very much want to enable all these people to do more work better, faster, stronger. But yeah, the community's been amazing. Hot is great. And
Yeah.
we've been
Yeah.
back in the olden days with the Haiti earthquake. That's kind of when humanitarian OpenStreetMap and OSM, really OSM, started to really build up was around that Haiti earthquake. And so that's kind of like one of those pivotal like moments, I think, in the mapping world and the mapping industry. I think it was 2009 or 2010 when that happened. And like people just have such a connection. And when I go back to talking about like, oh, talk about your best day, it's usually the worst day for someone else. But the fact
Yeah.
that the community could come together in Haiti, the Afghan elections around then were another really big example where the community kind of pulled together and was able to help and be really, really useful. So, yeah.
And that's the thing, you see, is, and I've spoken about this for far too long to far too many businesses and people within the market, that those who are leveraging geospatial data, Earth observation solutions, are overlooked far too much. And I really do believe that over the past 6 to 12 months, that this is starting to change through so many different verticals, so many different facets of the industry. Because when things do go wrong, a lot of the time, it's these types of communities, it's these types of initiatives and programs that are used, that are drafted in to, be the superheroes that they are. And I can't thank you enough, and the work that you are doing for this industry, for the people, because I think it's incredibly important. I like the fact that you are going from this idea of commercial and the career that you've had to where you're going tomorrow. And I guess a question I do have in that respect is, what are some of the challenges that you've faced going from a commercial setup, commercial environment, to a non-profit, and the focus that you now have?
To me, the nonprofit, I'm still learning a lot, but it's just been very interesting because I think we're seeing a ton of interest in space right now, right? Like funding for what I'd say is commercial space is increasing wildly. My disappointment is that's largely towards the militarization of space. So it's the defense and
Sure.
intelligence aspects of that. So I think a lot of the humanitarian nonprofit people I've met with have like very much the right intent, but our structures to me are like it's a much harder environment to work in because if I was doing this commercially, I could just go to a venture capitalist and say, "Hey, I got this idea. I can make some money, and we can move ahead on it." Uh, in this world, it's much more. And again, I think it's a really hard funding season, but it's a bit more personality based, right? It's individuals that can fund things. It's relationships matter. It's not that those don't matter in the commercial world, but the the systems are just different, and so I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's it's hard to break into again, even for me, switching from like profit to impact and being systematically showing each step along the way that we can have the impact that we want versus letting the market decide is very different. So yeah, it's been challenging, but I also don't think many of these initiatives could survive without those nonprofit partners, right? I think
Mm.
what I worry about is all these public goods that are kind of getting edged out. I think we've kind of seen slowly the erosion of public goods, and
Yeah.
maybe just accelerating now. So I think my bigger concern is, well, some of these nonprofits are hard to work with. Them going away is, I'd say, just a really, really bad thing. And so there's a lot of, I actually just learned this phrase the other day, but the enclosure of the commons. So the idea there is just like, uh, slowly eroding at a public good via commercial actors. So think about that as like AccuWeather, right? Like all of our weather forecasts are free and available, but then
Hmm.
AccuWeather starts lobbying Congress to say, hey, NOAA can no longer directly deliver those forecasts. We have to do it because that's our for-profit model. And so you gradually erode away and replace it with commercial interests. And I think you start looking at some of the worst disasters right now, and I think you're starting to see the commercialization of humanitarian work in a very scary way. So, yeah, I think we definitely need to come together and figure out what's important to us as a society, as a group, as a world, and try to solve those things. And I think I'm doing this as a nonprofit, not necessarily because I want to, because I think it is the best tool to actually get public goods out into the world,
Nice.
and to not do it in a way that I think I'm taking shortcuts, right? That's,
Absolutely. I advocate for that. That's brilliant to hear. And I want to know, in another life, if not this career, where do you think you'd have ended up?
man. And it's kind of funny because I kind of got into this life through a weird chain of events, but so it's hard to say where that would have gone. But let's see.
I remember once me and you had a chat, and you, if I remember correctly, spoke about your passion for woodwork. Is that
No,
correct?
I'm a rower. I'm a painter. I'm a mountain biker. I wish I could do woodworking, but
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 So rowing, mountain biking, painting.
yeah,
I mean, hey, look, for myself, I think I might have told you this. I was a huge football, or over in the US, Canada, soccer player, hoping that one day I could achieve the same heights as David Beckham, but unfortunately that wasn't to be the case. But hey, I'm here now, and I'm incredibly proud of kind of the career that I've kind of built to date. So hey, maybe you could have been in the gig, the rowing gig, maybe getting gold for America in another life.
I mean, I will say like I took rowing pretty far, and that's where I've actually got. That's what brought me into this community, and I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
parallels between the rowing community and the kind of mappy geospatial community that I really appreciate. Uh,
yeah,
One is that there's way less money in both of those than people think. You know,
yeah,
everyone thinks of rowers as like this elite thing. It's let me tell everyone, it's just much less fancy than you think it is. I think geospatial is the same, where it's the people that are doing the work and making the biggest difference. We really do kind of do it for each other and like the sense of community within the industry and within
yeah,
rowing. I think it's uh, to me, I found I can always really rely on those two communities if I need help on anything. Right? It's
yeah,
uh, definitely a lead by example, put in the work. Unfortunately, more often than not, it's work harder, not smarter. um, but
yeah.
that's what I appreciate about both the communities. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of discussion about 2030, 2050 net zero targets. We're doing a lot of the work today for tomorrow. All right. And I'm very keen to understand when future generations look back at where we are today in relation to Earth observation and geospatial technology and what we are trying to achieve, what will they say that we missed?
I think we missed a lot. I think, to me, looking back, it's the enablement of space as a public good, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that all these commercial companies that are doing all this really great work, they're almost exclusively funded by the government and by governments, and yet that data is inaccessible to taxpayers from those governments.
Hmm.
Um, and so we think about this problem a lot as like stranded assets. So satellite imagery that's held in archives is just stranded, right? Like it's been paid for, it exists, and we don't have access to it. And then what the other stranded asset I think is spare capacity online. So you also have all these satellites that just aren't taking pictures because it's not commercially viable to take those pictures. Um, so yeah, to me, when we go 10, 20 years in the future, it'll be like, hey, why didn't we just open up and release this data sooner? And again, I think enabling our entire ecosystem to do better, it's important to make all the data more available, more accessible, not less accessible, right? I think just, yeah, that enclosure of that common good is really kind of backwards. And I think it's one of the things that's really been holding back the commercial part of the business. And that does benefit the government bit of the business because they get exclusive access. But I hope 10 to 20 years from now, we're looking at the world in a way of how can we give more of these taxpayer funded things back to the people and making more data available to make the world more actually transparent and hold people accountable based on real data. So,
Absolutely. And there seems to be like the same over the past 10, 15 years, this discussion about a decentralized future, a lot of that coming from the blockchain community.
yep.
I'm just keen to understand from a publicly available data environment, do you see the utilization of blockchain technology being used in your area of work? Could that be potentially the future of common space, or do you not necessarily want to go down that route?
There's potential there in a couple of ways. I don't know exactly what that looks like. So if anyone's listening is a blockchain expert, definitely let me know.
Yeah,
But to me, one of the big concerns is distributing the imagery to good actors and not bad actors, right? So
understood. Yeah, makes sense.
number one worry is do no harm. So when we start releasing imagery, I want to make sure that we're releasing that to people that need or have need of access, but are also kind of verified or validated in a way.
Hmm.
And that gets really hard and contextual because you also don't want to have friction between someone in need of the imagery and getting access to that imagery, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
instant access for good actors and no access for bad actors. And
Hmm.
blockchain were able to get that done for me. That would be amazing. Also, just
Yeah,
validating imagery. I think we have less issue there because if our data is public, you should be able to just take your image and compare it to the public asset.
yeah,
But there could be a nice, clean blockchain way of doing that.
interesting, interesting indeed. And I guess from my perspective, being in staffing for this particular industry, employment, the market, and I guess the methodology behind hiring at the moment, it does seem broken to so many people. And that isn't just to this particular industry, it's global. It's a global problem that we seem to have. Um, I guess I'm keen to understand your take on why you think that is. And what do you think should be done to give people hope again?
Oh, geez, I just have to give people hope. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going
Tough
to see.
questions. It's a
Yeah,
tough crowd here. Come on.
I think what we're seeing right now is just a consolidation in the industry, and so you've seen that like via private equity getting more involved and pushing out of founders by private equity or VC backed folks, and I think our industry is very very strange. It's it's hard to understand. It's super nuanced, both in the customers and the licensing and all these other things, and so we also, I talk about this industry, but I'm kind of talking about four different industries simultaneously. You've got the engineers building satellites. You've got what I'd say the raster remote sensing people. You've got the
Yeah.
GIS vector people, and then you've got the end user, regardless of your industry.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a lot of mismatches there. There's a lot of there's so much interest in the space stuff, but people don't necessarily know where they fit in, and people from each of those industries don't understand the value of the other bits and pieces. Like remote sensing people are just like, oh, GIS is just vector stuff, and then the people that are building the satellites have no idea what the end users actually want to do with that data.
Yeah.
So people hire generalists or they hire what they're familiar with. The same issue when I was saying, oh, I was talking to the people that I know in my own community. That happens to every single company too, where engineering companies hire engineers and GIS people hire GIS people. But so all these different industries are a bit further apart. And so I think as a group or community, we need to find people that can actually bring those things closer together so that the remote sensing folks and the GIS folks speak the same
Hmm.
language and can take advantage of their methodologies. And satellite people definitely need to be talking to end users and to GIS and remote and raster folks. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do think a lot of the consolidation is also just very profit motivated. So it's not about providing more value for what we have. It's about milking the value out of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
I would agree.
that's a hard one. I think my hope is that people will see the failures where private equity and some of the other folks have not done a great job.
Hmm.
Where those
Hmm.
viable businesses that basically failed because the new leadership that took over had no idea what they were doing. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a few years before we really start to see the results of that happen, though.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And ghosting as well. That should never happen. Bill, it has been an absolute pleasure learning about yourself, your interests in rowing, of course, but more importantly, common space.
Thanks so
Is there
much.
any final words that you would like to share? Any
No,
forward guidance?
I just want to say I appreciate it. I see all the work that you do, trying to hire all the good people out there and placing the right people in the right spots. But yeah, really glad you're doing this and finding folks out there that are definitely worth talking to and sharing their stories. So
Thank you.
appreciate it, and thank you.
Very kind of you. So thank you very much, Bill. Much appreciated. And hopefully we can get you on for another episode in the next 6 to 12 months where we can learn a bit more about how far you've got and what's going on at that point in time. Hello, and thank you for watching today's episode of Earth Observed, powered by DeepRec AI. If you're interested in joining me for an episode of your own to discuss a topic of your choice, do get in contact with me. And of course, if you are looking to scale your team within geospatial, Earth data, or atmospheric AI, please do get in contact. I'd love to understand how I can support you. Until next time, have a great day.